And now, fresh off a 30-year break from his life in over-the-air radio, here's the host of the most originally named 15 Years Too Late podcast, JaySapChats.
All right, the great Katelyn Bourgoin.
I don't know about how great, but I'm here.
I got to tell you, I spent a lot of time on radio and in the media, and I talk to a lot of people. I mean, you and I are friends. I'm nervous to chat with you today.
No.
I don't know what I am. I'm telling you, you know what? I just think the world of you. I admire you. I think you're incredibly talented, and yeah, I'm totally.
Well, I feel honored to say that, especially coming from somebody as talented and awesome as you. So thank you.
You know what? Your video is just a little off. I wonder, it's like almost like low speed or low res. I just want to make sure that we don't capture that. Hey, I'm going to put on pause for 1 second.
Yep.
So there we go.
Let's do this.
Awesome. So let's get into it. I mean, you're the owner and founder of Why We Buy, and you're the founder and co-founder and partner of Unignorable.
That's right.
You are labeled the buyer psychologist. You use science to help people. I didn't want to say self-labeled, but listen, I mean, that's part of what your deal is, right? Is like you get the opportunity to label yourself in this world. Like you don't have to, you don't have to wait for your nickname. Like you can give yourself that nickname, and then you just, obviously you have to run fast because you got to keep up to it. But that's the great part of it. But what I want to do is I want to go back in time because you weren't, so first off, let me just say, I love the fact that you're with me here. I mean, I've got a really small gathering of people. I'm not super big on social media, just crossing 2,500.
Right?
Well, I post it every day on LinkedIn, and that's the medium that I've chosen. You knew me when I didn't post on any social media platforms. And I've grown my following from like 600 people to 2,500, not really using cheat codes or buying followers. So these are real people. And a lot of folks that I've reached out to that have audiences of your size, just come up with I'll see them on 100 podcasts and I'll ask them and they'll be like, oh, I'm really busy. I've got, I've got something I can't do. But like you said, yes. And that's like,
I'll be honest, I said yes
part of
because
who
it's
you are.
Generally, I have a rule, and I learned this from Seth Godin, that I won't be on somebody's first 50 podcasts, because there's a thing that happens in podcasting where a lot of people produce like 5, 10, maybe 15 episodes, and then they quit, right? And so Seth Godin had this rule because he's approached often to do podcasts, which was, I'd absolutely love to be on your podcast. Come to me when you're above 50 episodes. And so that's generally my take too. However, when I know somebody and I know that they're going to be committed and I know that they're going to be a great podcast host, I'll make an exception. So I made an exception.
Well, I'm just a straight addict and I can't stop once I start something. So that makes it even more simple. But I'm telling you, I mean, I have a person in my world that I knew when they were at the lowest of their low and would pick them up and, was a really great friend through the worst of times, who has exploded as a creator and won't return my emails or calls.
That's a shame.
It's just insane. But you know what? Here's the good news. Like, I don't have to be that person, and I don't have to behave that way with the people who I actually adore and care for. So anyway, I diverge. Back to, you're from originally Nova Scotia.
That's right. Little nowhere, Nova Scotia. For anybody in the States, it's in Eastern Canada. It's about a 10-hour drive to New York.
Is it little?
It's very little. The whole province is 1 million people. The city that I live in, is, I think, 700,000 people. But I come from a town of 2,000 people. But it's a beautiful town. It's a tourist destination in the summer. The population triples. So, yeah.
So you go from 2,000 people to 6,000 people. Is it like an inlet? Is it right on the
2,000
water?
to 600,000. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm from Lunenburg, which is on the water. Beautiful little town. It's actually one of only, I think, 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in North America, which means that the town is essentially maintained from, it's a 300-year-old settlement, and they've kept it as is. So you walk through this town, you feel like you're going back in time. So it's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound cool. And any brothers and
I have
sisters?
a sister. Yeah, my sister's about almost 2 years older.
Close?
We are close. We've not lived in the same city for a lot of time. So there's often, we're not as close as probably either of us would like to be. But I mean, she's my person. If I'm going through something, I know I can call her. If she's going through something, she knows she can call me. I'm going home actually next week, and I'm going to be staying with her for a few days while I'm in Halifax. So,
Oh, that's nice.
Because I'm now living in Quebec, Canada. We've been here for almost 2 years.
Okay. And we'll talk about that move because that was pretty significant and kind of speaks to you as who you are as a person in doing and in making that move, because at the time you did it, you know, things weren't as steady as they are now, and there was a lot of risk for you to do that. So how many people in your high school? Like, how would you grow up?
My high school was, so I went, when I was going to the school in Lunenburg, our class was 31 people, our grade, and that was one of the biggest ones. We were like the big class. But then I went to high school in a neighboring town that was offered international baccalaureate programs, which we didn't have at the smaller high school. And then I think maybe 800, like.
So 800 in the class, or 200 in the
whole
class?
school.
Like 800.
So grades 10 to 12, 10, 11, 12, 800.
Okay.
So that was the big school, and it felt like a huge leap after being with the same people from primary until
Yeah. And what do you like as a kid? Like, are you like a popular kid? Are you a sports kid? Are you an art kid?
Like I got lucky in the sense that I was not a popular kid in elementary school. I was teased, bullied, and
Really?
through junior high, my mom made the decision to basically force me to go into a French immersion program at a junior high school. And I was completely resistant to it, did not want to go, terrified, meet new people, all of that. But it actually turned to be a great thing because all the French immersion kids are kind of nerds. So I was like the cool kid amongst the nerds. And I got to meet a bunch of new people. And that kind of built my confidence. And then I'd say in high school, in my little, like, I went to the big high school for 2 years and then actually ended up finishing at the small high school because I got sick of doing the commute and I was spending a lot more time with my friends in my small town anyway. I'd say it was kind of cool in high school. But again, 30 kids. So
Yeah. No, I mean, you're into psychology clearly, right? And mostly on the buyer side, but have you looked back and thought to yourself why, was it a French speaking and you spoke English? Was it what caused that situation to exist for you? Was it a family? Was it economic?
It's a great question. So I did not, at graduating high school, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, as many 18-year-olds don't. And went off to university, and initially didn't even want to go to university. I thought I was going to go do like a photography program. Again, my mom, a little overbearing, was like, no, you have to go to university. I'm like, well, you're not paying for it. So like, really, because I was doing student loans, I'm like, we really shouldn't be in this situation where you're telling me what to do. But she's a pretty strong-willed woman. So went to university thinking, well, maybe I'll do law. Law was like, as an 18-year-old, you're not exposed to that many jobs. And so you're kind of like picking from the ones that exist. I always thought business was boring. I wasn't good at math. I didn't think that I would ever want to do anything in business. So went to university, started my first intro to law class. I was like, oh my God, this is so boring. I hate this. And then I felt confused. I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do now. So I was always a good writer. I'd kind of enjoyed writing. I kind of kept a diary, wrote poems, that sort of thing. And so
did you read a lot when you were young?
I read, I guess, a decent amount. I played a lot of video games, but I just seemed, out of the things that came naturally to me, writing was one of
Writing
them.
was, yeah.
And so I ended up graduating with an English degree, which for your listeners does not give you a lot of job prospects. And so I was, working as a server for several years after that, again, being like, okay,
Yeah.
what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I was really lucky. I had a great, the woman who I worked for, she was young, she was ambitious, she was an entrepreneur. And she said to me, she's like, Katelyn, you're so good with people. You're a good writer. She's like, you should go into PR. And I was like, made this mental note. I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. And then I was like, I have no idea what PR means.
This is after
This
your
is after.
university
So I
experience
graduated with my
that
English
happened?
degree, not really planning to become a teacher, don't want to go teach
Yeah.
English somewhere. So there's really nothing for me to do.
It's funny. All right. Well, let's jump back in
Mhm.
time for a second. What did your folks do growing up? Like, what did you see? What was your experience through like osmosis,
Right.
right?
So my dad passed away when I was 1.5. So I didn't
Okay.
have that role model.
Wow.
My mom was, when we were coming of age, she was trying to figure it out as a single mom. She had not finished high school. She had a learning disability that went diagnosed for a lot
Wow.
of her life. And so she had not finished high school. She didn't have she hadn't had any secondary education. So for my young life, she was actually we were on welfare. And then eventually she got a job at the post office, which was a good, stable, decently paying job given the criteria that you need to have to get it. And so for most of my life, she worked at the post office for my whole life. So that was kind of my exposure. My grandfather was a, serial entrepreneur, many different businesses, some successful, some
Oh,
failed.
interesting.
He was
Is that your father or your
That was
mother's
my mom's
father?
father, and he was very much a huge role model to me. Him and my grandmother were like my second parents. We were at their place every weekend. And so he owned the local bar in town. And so I would go after school.
In a town of 2,000, the local bar is probably a pretty popular
Big
place.
time, yeah. And it was Lunenburg was a fishing town. All of the men were fishermen, and so they'd come in off the boat, and before they'd even go home and see their families, they'd be at the bar. So
Yeah.
I watched him, as an entrepreneur. He was actually a pretty incredible man, which I didn't realize until I got older. Like he had world records for hydroplaning. He was designing a tidal-powered engine that he sent to the Prime
Wow.
Minister of Canada, who was completely in the pocket of big oil. So of course nothing ever happened with
Funny.
his tidal-powered like energy system, but really interesting man. And so I think I had an exposure early to seeing, entrepreneurship and people who built many different things. Like, he had that business. Before that, he'd had a bowling alley. He's kind of always doing different things. So that was my exposure to
Yeah.
that. But in my immediate, my immediate family, I wasn't exposed to that.
Yeah. I talk about my own story that way is like, I didn't even know you could own, it seems like you did. I didn't even know you could own a business, Katelyn. Like I had no idea that was something that people did because all the people that I grew up with, parents worked for big corporations like DuPont or Westinghouse, they were outside of Wilmington, Delaware, banking. They were in the banking world. And then my dad was a school teacher. And to me, like, you just worked for somebody else and they gave you a paycheck and then you came home. Like that was very early in my.
I wasn't entrepreneurial as a young person, though. I know that like a lot of people who are entrepreneurial, like, yeah, I was selling lemonade or like my first business was. I didn't have any of that. Like when I went off to university, I had it never even occurred to me that I might take a business class. Like it just wasn't even on my radar. And so when I ended up going and looking into PR and learning about PR and actually going off and doing a PR program, I realized, oh my God, like PR is kind of like the cousin of marketing. There, a lot of people who go and get PR degrees end up working in marketing agencies. And so I got exposed to marketing that way. And I was like, oh my God, I love marketing. This is amazing. But if you would have asked me at, 22 years old, what I thought of marketing, I would have had no opinion and no interest. So it's funny how there are things that, you just don't know that you're going to be interested in until you try them. So I think, for anybody listening who's at this stage where they're like at a crossroads trying to figure out what might be next for them, try a lot of stuff because you might surprise yourself. Like there might be things that you enjoy that you didn't think you would.
Did you work growing up?
Yeah. Yeah. I always had a summer job, not throughout the year. Yeah. I always had a job.
What were your jobs? What'd you do?
I worked at a whale watching booth. That was one of my first ones.
Like people would come and pay to get on boats to go whale watching,
Yeah.
and you would take
I
their
didn't
money
take
and give
them
them
on I would
tickets.
take their money, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was,
Okay.
like a vendor for there. I worked as, at a clock watch shop. Lunenburg had it was a tourist town. So basically
Mhm.
90% of the businesses closed in the winter. They were all the
Oh,
tourism.
wow.
And in the summer they opened. So there weren't as many job opportunities. Basically, you had to work at the gas station or the grocery store, or you didn't have a job if you're young.
Well, and those jobs were probably for people who were feeding their families,
Yes.
not
Yeah,
for
they didn't want
kids.
teenagers in those jobs. Yeah, exactly. So,
Right. They didn't need
yeah.
teenagers in those
Yeah,
jobs.
exactly. So, worked at the whale watching booth, the watch shop, another a book a folk art store. Mostly jobs, as a cashier essentially. But then I
Yeah.
was very much a career server for several years. So I got my first restaurant job doing breakfast, which is the worst restaurant shift. And then
Why? Because of the lower tickets, or because you have to wake up
to
at
wake
5
up.
a.m.?
I mean, I was a teenager who was enjoying my
Yeah.
youth way too much, way too much partying.
Understood.
Uh,
Yeah, understood.
so that was my first restaurant job, and then I was really fortunate actually. A couple moved to the town of Lunenburg, opened a fine dining restaurant there. Again, like I had these exposures to these young people opening
Yeah.
businesses, and this I reflect back on and I see, oh my God, I didn't realize that these exposures were creating this is possible in my mind, right? Like, but this young couple
Hmm.
came, they opened the restaurant. I got to work for them. There was very few people that had restaurant experience in town, so they hired me, and it's a four diamond restaurant. Like he's a Canadian wide known chef, and I had no
Mm.
experience at that level, so they trained me and taught me. And then years later, my husband, who's also a chef, moved back to Lunenburg, opened a restaurant, became best friends with these people, and the husband ended up standing in our wedding. So it's kind of like this. We're very close to them now, but yeah,
Incredible.
it's a small world. But I had these moments throughout my experience working for them, the woman that I worked for that restaurant in Halifax. Then when I got into my first marketing agency, my boss was a young woman who kind of like moved up into a director role very fast. So I had these moments where I got exposed to women, particularly being entrepreneurs and being highly successful in their field at a young age. And I think that without me realizing it was creating a awareness that that's possible. Because I think if you don't see it, you can't be it. And I think for a lot of particularly women, they don't see women entrepreneurs. And so they don't have a sense that this is something that they can do. Social media has made this a lot better. We now can see it more, it's more evident than it was. But when I was growing up, you didn't hear about women entrepreneurs.
I just saw a list of, I think it was like the top 20 richest women, and I think they were all over $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, I never really got into the whole gender
Mm-hmm.
thing, like meaning, all the women I cheated off of in high school and college to get good grade, all the people I cheated off of were always
Yeah.
women. Like the women were always at the top of the
Mm-hmm.
class. So it never dawned on me that a woman couldn't be CEO or a woman could be like, for the first 5 years of Inc., I don't think I might not have hired a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just
Mm-hmm.
don't, I mean, one, I think, but like, that doesn't dawn on me. But I guess as a woman, you just take a better, or you have a more clear view
Mm-hmm.
to it than I would have. But I mean,
I never really thought about it as much until I got into the startup space. So in the startup world, it's
interesting.
very many startups. Now this is less the case today, but when I was doing this, so I started I've started a venture-backed tech company back in 2014. And we were able to raise venture capital. We needed it because our model was one where you weren't going to be making money from customers. It was a two-sided marketplace. We needed to raise money to work with that model. And it was incredibly difficult to raise the money. And we were this huge success story because only about 1%, I think it might be 1 or 2% of venture capital funding goes to women. So it was always because I was struggling and I was watching my male peers. I was part of a startup incubator with a bunch of other amazing founders doing cool stuff. But like I could see the amount of traction that we had. Like when we were off raising money and I was comparing our user growth to other two-sided marketplaces that had grown slower and raised 10 times more money. And it was very frustrating because I kept hearing this narrative, which is it's just really friggin' hard to raise money as a woman. And so when I'd often go and meet with angel investors and they would like say to me, like, how are you going to get women to invest in this? And I was like, it's a gender neutral business opportunity. Like, why do I need
Right.
female investors? Because there aren't very many of them. So I think
Right.
that part of my
Crazy.
to recognizing and wanting to empower more women entrepreneurs is seeing that there are some roadblocks that women face, both in perception when it comes to raising money and also in lifestyle, because um, a lot of times in many households, the dominant parent is the woman. And so when you want to be the ambitious entrepreneur and then also a mom, that creates some conflict in some households. So for me, it's
but that reminds me, like when I worked the chairman of the company that I worked for at Marquis Jet. I mean, he would always, like, when somebody added, like if they buy a car or if they got a home or if they added some level of a liability, he would just lick his chops. He loved it. He thought it was the greatest thing. He wanted his people to spend money. And the reason he wanted them to spend money, salespeople, of course, right? And the reason he wanted them to spend money and add obligations is because it forced them to have to sell and be successful. So he always felt that the more liabilities that somebody added, the actual better of an employee they became. So now extrapolate that out to the ultimate expenditure, which is a child, right? But not only just financial, but also emotional, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, so you've got this incredibly, you're locked in to pay for this person that you've brought onto earth, and then also show them the way to do things in life, right? I love it. My number 2 is a woman. She's been with me for 10 years, and she's had 2 children with me. She had some struggles to do that, and that we lived through together. And I supported the whole time that she was going through that.
And that's wonderful.
And it's just made her,
because you know what, like
but it's made her so much better. She's so much better today with 2 kids, even if she comes in an hour after everyone else, even if she has the appointment that she has to leave for. She's the only one who clocks in at 9:30 at night when she has to. And I don't tell her she has to. Like, I don't have to tell her she has to. It's just she's elevated to be my number 2 person and didn't have to elevate to be my number 2 person.
I love that you've
I love her. I couldn't live without her.
Because for me, I'll be really transparent. Like, before I became a mom, I was always very much like, I was like, women deserve to be, in the boardrooms. They should be getting these senior level roles. And this is true in like the marketing world too. If you look at the marketing world, I thought something like 70% of marketers are women. And women hold like 10% of director level. So even though the mass majority of marketers are women, the ones who are the leaders are the men. And so there's always these statistics that have always been frustrating. But then when I remember, so I had a team member who'd worked with me in my startup that ended up failing. I started my new business, which was like a consulting and training business. And once I got to a certain level, I brought her back. Now at this point, she'd had a baby. It was, she had a 1-year-old baby. And I was like, oh my God, no problem. Like, it'll be awesome having you back. And she did a great job. I can't remember what was going on where we ended up parting ways. I think maybe she got a government job. Or no, I have a bad memory. I'm trying to remember. But I remember thinking, she came to me at one point and she's like, I'm just not the same that I was when we worked together before. She's like, I just need you to understand that, like, I'm not able to write the way that I used to. I'm tired all the time. Like, and the expectation that I'm going to be able to perform at the level I did before is hard. And I was like, no, it's going to be fine. And then when I became a mom myself, I was like, oh, it was like getting hit with a sledgehammer, because I was like, I'm not the same. Like, my brain is not the same. Like, my energy levels is not the same. My ability to be creative for a long sustained period, and just my interest in working insane hours. Like, I work less than 40 hours a week. And like, I can't see a world where I'd do more, not even if I wanted to, right? Like, it's just not viable.
Because you don't have it, because you're raising your family.
Exactly. And because I'd rather, clock out and eat breakfast together or eat dinner together at the table than
Yeah.
have, my husband's step up or like hire, more babysitters. Like I want to be there. And so
Yeah.
my priorities just completely changed. Where
All right. So let's back up because I like the
Mhm,
journey. The journey is what interests me because it's just so curvy all the
mhm,
time. And, social media can really fool you because you read people's stories and you're like, oh, that person has everything
yeah.
together and that person had it easy. And, oh, I went from 0 to 300,000 followers in 42 minutes.
Mhm,
And, I did it by doing these 5 hacks and you can
mhm,
too. And clearly not my experience in life. I mean, I've fallen so many more times, but I've gotten up one more time than I've
mhm,
fallen. Um, when you go through university, you meet good friends right when you get there. Like, is it different than the 30? I mean, it's different than the 31 person
mhm.
class, but like, how do you adjust as like a human? Like, take me through the human element of how you look back on your university experience of adjusting to just being on your
Mhm,
own, having more
mhm.
people. Are you a go nuts kid? Are you a go along to get along? Is it I find my best lifetime
Mhm.
friends? Is it I'm a loner? Like, where are you at then?
I look in reflecting back, I so I had come from this small community and went to the city, which is 1 hour away. And many of my friends also went to the city. It was a university town, like 6 universities. And so I actually kind of just continued being friends with the people I'd been friends with I made some new
Okay.
friends, but for the most
Yeah.
part, my closest connections were the ones that I'd known from high school, elementary, junior high. Um,
Interesting.
and when I, had turned 20, I was living with a friend. Um, and it's kind of interesting. So like if we're going back, like we had my small town, like many small towns, we joked that it was a drinking town with a fishing problem, right? Like all of the people in town, particularly the teenagers and young adults, were big drinkers. We can drink a lot, and that also led to a lot of drinking and driving, which led to a lot of car accidents. And so every summer there would be, we'd lose people, and you lose 3 people in one accident, you lose people in another. It was rough. And then one year, my boyfriend at the time, and we'd kind of been on the off, and then a good friend of mine, they died in a car accident. And the interesting thing that happened was that a girlfriend of mine who I don't think would have ever left Lunenburg, the small town we were from, because this happened, the person that was in the car was kind of like her on and off person for many years. And she's like, I'm going to move to the city and I'm going to change my life, right? I want to make some changes. And so we moved in together. And funny enough, she ended up having a connection to my now husband, who's a chef who she'd worked under. He's 8 years older than me. We're from the same town, but we never knew each other because by the time he was leaving to go off and be an
Makes
adult
sense.
and like, go study university, he lived in a bunch of different countries. Like I was now coming up. So we just didn't have, we had people we knew in common, but we didn't know each other. And so he ended up moving back from the Cayman Islands, and he'd been in a long relationship that ended, and ran into a friend of my roommate, and they came over, and that changed my life in the sense that, like, for the next several years, we were trying to figure out once he realized that I was younger than he thought I was when we met, because my friend that I was living with was 3 years older. I kind of assumed he was
Mhm.
like a couple years older than her. We just thought there wasn't such a big age gap. And at 20, to be dating a 28-year-old is a somewhat significant gap. Um,
Sure.
we were kind of on again, off again, but he ended up moving back to Lindbergh, renting a house that was a stone's throw from my mother's house. So when I would go home for the summer and live with my mom and work when university was done, we would just be there. So I'd say that the connections that I kept from my childhood ended up connecting me with the person who would be my life partner. But it was unexpected. It's like we could have gone through life and never met each other.
When you say it was on again, off again, did you know that he was the one and it was circumstance, like he's away and he's got business or he's older, or was it like I don't know if he's the one and Like, how long is that
I think I
sort
knew
of
he
like
might be the
period?
one. He was not ready to commit. So he'd had his heart broken by his previous girlfriend, who he kind of thought was going to be his person he'd marry. They were living in the Cayman Islands together, planning to move back to Nova Scotia, and he got this great chef job. And he came back because there was a stage 4 hurricane, and he came back before her to kind of get things set up, and she came back and broke up with him and said, "I've been cheating on you this whole time." So he'd just had his heart broken about 2 weeks before I met him. And so he
Oh,
wasn't in a place where he was ready to look for something real when we met. And then when he, when he moved back to Lunenburg, there was just a lot of, I was still in Halifax, like we weren't in the same community, like the same place. And so when I would come home, we would kind of like hang out and get together, but like it wasn't serious. And then he eventually moved back to the Halifax and started running a bunch of nightclubs and restaurants, and had just like a lot of fun and a lot of access to women. And so again, not ready to commit. So we always had this kind of like on again, off again thing where we were non-committal. And I was afraid to commit because I'd had,
and you were back and forth to school at that time
yeah,
too, right? Like 20 to 22.
exactly.
So you sort of were both
Yeah.
doing your own thing, but together, but not
Yeah.
together.
And so I'd say there was about 2, 3, there was probably about 3 years where it was kind of on and off and on and off, where we were hanging out, but there was not, what they would call today a situationship, which is a great
It's
term, which
funny.
I didn't, we started, this was before online dating was really a thing. Like this was like, 20 years ago. Uh, but
Yeah, yeah.
it was funny because once we did finally say, okay, we're going to do this, we went from like, I don't know what this is, to living together almost immediately, because it'd
Oh,
been so
really?
long. Like it wasn't like we were new to each other. We knew each other so well.
Right.
And his friend who came to visit us here recently, he said he'd come back from living in Vietnam and hung out with Jason. And he said, Jason told me there was this girl, but he wasn't ready because he knew once this happened, it would be the thing. And he probably wouldn't. So like he kept delaying. He was like, we're not gonna. So it's interesting because I think a lot of people in his life knew that I was the right person for him, but he had not yet decided that. Bouncers at the
And
bars that he worked at would say to him, Jason, you're an effing idiot. Because they'd see him
yeah,
fooling
yeah.
around with these other girls, and they're like, you have this amazing girl, and this is what you're doing. Why are you so stupid? Like,
That is, yeah, I mean, a situationship.
yeah,
That's funny. That's
yeah.
crazy. So not to get too far ahead, but just overall, I mean, you're still
Mhm,
together, obviously. He's been, I mean, he's had his own things going on. You've had
mhm,
your own things going
mhm,
on, but like in your success,
mhm.
like, can you reflect on like how important he's been relative to your
Oh, there's no
success?
way that I would ever have had the confidence um and just resiliency to do this without him being such a huge supporter. He is a massive supporter of mine. He believes in me so much more than I do. It's something that we're working on together. He's just, yeah, he really, he thinks that I am a genius, which I don't think is true, but he seems to have that
I think you're a
perception.
genius too, by the way.
He seems to have that perception. Um,
Yeah.
and he's always, it's funny because like he'll give me advice and like say, maybe you should do this, and I'll be resistant to it. And then a year later, somebody else will give me the same advice. I'll go, I was talking to so and so, and they said this, and I really think he's like, interesting, because I told him already.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes I don't give him as much credit as he deserves. I think he's saying things just because he loves me and he's kind. But I think yeah. There's no way that I would have ever had this opportunity to kind of build this business that I have now if I didn't have him in my corner. Because there's so many times I would have quit.
But there's also something about, I mean, it takes a special guy to be with somebody who's
Mhm,
public,
mhm,
right? You built a business that's got tons of social media
mhm,
attention, um, you know,
mhm.
female, and also successful. I mean, that's not every guy can handle
The
that.
funny thing is too, like he could equally like, we had so kind of fast forwarding in the story after
Mm.
like once my tech startup failed, my husband had gone through starting a couple of businesses himself. So he built a fish and chip franchise, and from the ground up, didn't buy the franchise, built it. Had a terrible breakup with his business partner. Ended up selling his stakes in the company, never getting his buyout because his business partner's a snake. But so he'd kind of had some crushing entrepreneurial things happen. Decided to get out of the chef world, got a certification to become a safety officer. So with the goal of working offshore, which there's a lot of good money for safety officers offshore. So I had closed down the tech company, working as a consultant, trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. And he finally gets his opportunity after like 7 years in safety to go in offshore, which is great. Good money. We don't have a family yet at this point. His contract ends, and this is in January of 2020. And so he's like, I've got a little bit of time, I'm going to take a little time off because he's been gone for like 3 weeks at a time. He's like, I'm going to take a little bit of time off and figure out what's next. Well, the global pandemic was next, and nobody was flying anywhere, and you weren't able to work offshore, and job opportunities dried up. And so as we're going through this, he'd always wanted to get back into having his own business, something in food. It's, all the restaurants are closed, so it doesn't make sense for us to start a restaurant. And we decided to create Charboys, which was ready to grill barbecue boxes delivered to your door. So think like HelloFresh, but specifically for barbecue. And he, that business from the outside.
This is before you're online at all, right?
I'm a little online at this point, not to the same extent. Like I probably had like, I might have had like, 10,000 followers on Twitter at this point. I'd started growing on Twitter at this point. I'd started the newsletter had started. We started the newsletter. But so him and I decided to do this together. And let me tell you, there are hard businesses. Like doing a two-sided market is hard. Like doing a social network is hard. I've done both of those. There is nothing as hard that I've experienced as shipping fresh food. Like it's.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
We did it, and the model was just awful. We would recreate boxes for a theme every month. So, like, every month, we're completely redoing the marketing, redoing the packaging, designing new menus. It was a nightmare. But it was... from the outside, things were, going well. Like we had our first call with Shopify when we launched our first store. And I remember the guy being like, this is crazy. He's like, I've never seen a business do this on day one. And I was like, well, we're not making any money, so don't be that impressed. The margins are like non-existent. So we were losing money while growing. And I'd just gone through this, VC-backed company. I'm like, I don't want to raise venture capital again. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do a model that's going to require that. I don't see a path to profitability with this. But he was so good at it. And as part of it, he'd started kind of building his online persona. So he started an Instagram, being like doing lives on Instagram, Facebook, and he's growing a following. People are like recognizing him on the street in our city. Like he was doing all of this. And essentially, as that business model, like we then found out we were pregnant. And so it's like we've now operating 2 businesses, one that makes no money and takes all of my time. My income from my consulting is actually what's paying all of our bills. And now I'm pregnant. What are we going to do? So like 8 months into the pregnancy, I was just like, I just don't think this is viable. Like, because I just don't see a path to, unless we want to take on a lot of like debt with this company, or the amount of scale we would need to do to make the margins make sense was just not viable. And so we decided we were going to do our last box. It was funny because I delivered my son on June 8th, and Father's Day was 2 days later, and I was sending emails for our promotional Father's Day box from the delivery room to like promote this like deal, because like I was in survival mode, right? Like we needed the income from this to come in. This was our last one we were going to do. And like, that was a time in my life, I don't think I've been as stressed as I was then. So we decided, okay, this is our last box. We're going to regroup. We're going to figure out a model that makes sense. And we started talking about him doing a catering business, because catering business, completely different style of business.
Yeah. Catering business, you don't buy anything until someone buys it from you.
That's right.
And they pay you up front for the stuff that you buy, and it's no cash outlay, and
we started
guaranteed
this
income
persona and this following, and so people just wanted Jason to come over, and it wasn't just. And
Right. They didn't want the food. They wanted
yeah,
him.
exactly. He was a huge part of the draw. He's incredibly hilarious. Like if you were to watch some of our videos about him, he's very funny. He's an incredible chef. But so we're planning to do this last box, and then he's going to start working on the catering business. And we said we're going to take some of the summer off. We're new parents. We, we need the time off. And he broke his neck. He had an accident. He fell down. He's very tall, and he's had something called degenerative disc disease. So he knew at some point his neck, he might have to have some corrective something with his neck, and so he fell down.
Might as well do it with the newborn.
Yeah, we've got a 3-month-old, and so he broke his neck. Was sent home from the emergency room, not diagnosed. They sent him home because they were closing. And the next day he went to wash his hands and he felt like electric shocks go through his body because he had all this nerve damage. And he went to his chiropractor thinking that he's, I've got to figure out what's going on. I'm going to go to the chiropractor. The chiropractor touched him. She goes, I will not do anything on you. She, like, when she reacted, she's like, you need to go back to the emergency room immediately. Like, and had she treated him, he'd be paralyzed. Like he would have been paralyzed. But she sent him back. He was there for 12 hours. We have a bad medical system in Nova Scotia. It's been bad in the last number of years. And they forgot about him. He got left in the waiting room. And finally, once they found him, they assessed him. They came in. He goes, okay, so like, when am I going home? They go, going home? Has nobody talked to you yet? And he's like, no. And he's like, oh, you're going for immediate spurt surgery. Like, you need a spinal surgery, like, immediately. And I was like, oh shit. So at this point, I'm like, it's still like my consulting business is paying the bills. And now we have to do more.
But not big. I mean, you're not super successful. You're not super successful at this
No,
point, right?
like
I mean,
I was probably,
I
was generating probably like $130K a year to maybe 150.
Right.
Like, so it was enough. We didn't have a lot of expenses. We've always lived below our means, and so it was enough to get us by. But yeah, but so now he can't even lift our newborn, right? Like, and so that was 6 weeks of and an enormous amount of guilt on his part. But I mean, it's like nothing you can do. And so finally, once he started kind of coming around again, and he was able to, get back into being physical, he went in for his 3-month checkup, and the doctor said, "Oh my God, you need another spinal surgery." Like, he's like, "This never happens, but we're seeing these discs moving." And he's like, and I remember the doctor being like, because the doctor wanted him to come and cater for his daughter's graduation party. They became buddies. And the doctor was like, he knew that it was our anniversary and we were going to be going out that night. And the doctor said, you need to be so careful, because if you get bumped, if anything happens to you, like, you could be paralyzed. Like, we're going to get you in 3 days, but you need to be very careful. And so we were going through it again. And another 6 weeks of of him not being able to assist with parent stuff. And it was, I think, I'll be honest, like, with the listeners, like, I'm at the stage now where I'm about to take some time off from June, because even though our life has stabilized, and it really has over the last year, because then something happened after this that became even more difficult for me. But like, I feel like I've been burned out ever since, like, before my tech company, and there's been no respite. And I'm just like, I've been operating in like, what would be the word? Survival mode for a really long time. And now that everything is stable, my nervous system doesn't know that. And so I think I need to take some time and really work on that.
So I want to talk about where you're at today, but I just want to go back in time. When did, like, was it Twitter or X? Back Twitter, of course. But did you open Twitter and a Twitter account with purpose, or did you just
not really
start a Twitter? Like, was that the first social media account, or did you say, I'm going to be on social media, I'm going to be an influencer, I'm going to go for it? Like, did you have any intention at the start? Like, when was all this?
I mean, as a marketer, I knew that my plan was, I was running this consulting business, and I was doing workshops locally, working with tech companies to help them better understand their customers. Because one of the things that came out of my failure with my company was we were actually really good at acquiring customers. The marketing side was always my strength. We didn't build the right product. It wasn't sticky. People didn't hang around. And so my lead investor came to me, who had the portfolio of companies, and said, like, we've got all of these great founders who are really good at building products and terrible at getting people to know why they should want them. And would you work with them? So I ended up going from, bankruptcy with my tech startup to, needing to start working immediately and having this opportunity to just basically go into all of these companies and help them. I would see the same thing over and over, which was they were so focused on what their product did, but they really didn't understand the people who were using it. And you'd see founders at the boardroom table arguing, like, that one person would say, this is our target customer. Another one would go, yeah, but like this one's also important. And so I realized really quickly, I was like, oh, there's like this real issue here where founders don't understand who their customers are, and they need to go off and be able to do customer research. They need to better understand that. And so from that, I had in my mind decided, I think I'm going to start an insights agency. So I'm going to build an agency to help mostly, startups and high growth companies do customer research and have the insights they need to grow. And so that was my plan, but I hadn't started it yet. And I was basically started the newsletter to build pipeline for that future agency. I was wanting to build my own profile because I was like, I can't just work with companies in Atlantic Canada. It's too small. Nobody has money here. So I need to be able to access clients from outside of the region. And so I had been intentional around, like, I want to build awareness around being like the importance of customer research. And so I had been posting on Facebook. People still posted a lot on Facebook back then. I had been doing a little bit on Instagram, but I went into Twitter, and I'd had an account for years, but I never opened it. I never went in, never used it. And I remember one night before I went to bed, I started posting a little bit. This was at the same time that Trump was running for president. And so I was mostly
16.
I was mostly hanging out on Twitter because I just thought it was so fascinating to watch him. Because I'm sorry, like, as a Canadian, I don't get how he got chosen, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But I was so fascinated by him because, like, just the things that he would tweet, I was like, oh my God, like, how is this like? And up at the time, this was before, like, I'd started kind of being back on Twitter, just watching him essentially. And then sometimes I'd go in there and I'd write something because I was like, I'm here already. And one night I went to bed. I was just typing something out before I went to bed. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was essentially like, something around why it's important to understand your customers, and that, like, if you don't do this, you're going to struggle. I can't even remember what it was. It was somewhat elegant, but I went to bed, put my phone down, woke up in the morning, and that post had gone viral. And it was being
Somewhat
shared
elegant.
by, like, some of the big tech kind of like thought leaders in marketing. I was like, what? Like, and that today,
How many followers do you think you had at that point?
3,000, 5,000, like.
I mean, so you had a significant amount of followers already. I mean, that's a lot of followers.
Maybe, but I'm trying to remember even why I had any, because, like, I think I'd been using that account originally for my startup. So I changed it to my personal name after that. So I think I've been using it for the startup. And then I was like, I just want to start a new account, and this one has some followers.
I think the truth is, Katelyn, is that you speak in a way, and this is how I see it, and this is how I've always seen it since the first time you and I ever interacted, and since I read your work online before even meeting you for the first time. I think you speak in a way that other people don't. And I think that's what attracts people to you. So when I read your work, two things happen. One is I learn, because typically what you're saying is something that either I didn't know, or I hadn't even considered, right? But the other piece is I feel like I'm talking to somebody who's talking to me. So I guess it's not a surprise that you had 3,000 followers by just sending out posts. And it's definitely not a surprise that you went viral. Because the way you communicate, it's like, I don't know if there's anybody else out there that could be as successful in telling you to eat your vegetables, which is literally your message, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but, like, talk to your customers is the eat your vegetables message.
It's like, you want to lose weight, diet, and weight loss. And nobody wants that to be the answer. But you have to make
I don't
it sexy,
want talking to my customers to be the answer. Like, that's hard.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's funny that you say this because here's the thing. Like one thing that I always say, and I think that for anybody listening who's considered wanting to build their own personal brand, like and wanting to create content, most of my posts are a note to self shared publicly. Like it's something that it's in the moment, something that I've learned or something that I'm thinking. I'm so like, even though it says you feel like it's being, I'm sending this directly to you, really, this is like my inner monologue. And I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to have to create really content that is like so thought-provoking and insightful, but like really what's going on in your head as entrepreneurs, depending on who your audience is, like the people that you want to attract are probably having those same thoughts, right? They're probably wanting, so it's like share the things that you're learning and what you might want to share for yourself, almost as a reminder. Like I didn't always talk to customers, and it's created this great kind of like confirmation bias for me where it's like, or could like this consistency bias where it's like there's times where I don't want to do things that I know I should do. They're going to be good for the company, but I don't feel like doing them. But because I'm always out there telling other people that these are important, I'm like, fuck, I got to do that too. So like use your social media as like a note to self. And I think a lot of people will see an improvement from then trying to like be so insightful and wise.
So 160,000 folks or so on X, Twitter.
I think 130 something, like 130, like not 100, just under 140.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, this is conversational. I don't have it up in front of me, but so it's 130,000 people or so on X. I saw a post that you sent the other day, which was basically like how many bots there are, and like you're tiring a little of X.
I'm not hanging out
too.
as much as I used to, and I miss it. Actually, I miss it a lot, and so I'm wondering, is it me? Is it like? But like, there was a time where that was my favorite place on the internet. I was talking to a lot of people, and you just had this energy, and particularly like, we call it like marketing Twitter. Like there was just this energy of like people connecting and working together, and like promoting each other's work, and doing podcasts together and stuff like that. And a lot of those people have left. And a lot of them have migrated over to LinkedIn because like LinkedIn,
where you have 70,000 folks in an audience that you've built
I think
there?
80 there, like
80, okay.
And that was mostly from at the beginning. I was just reposting my stuff from X there. Like my whole strategy was, I'm just going to repost the things that have worked on X, kind of maybe add to them a little bit, make them appropriate for LinkedIn. So I was really lucky because I didn't start on LinkedIn until I had a bunch of proven posts from X. So I knew things that had worked on one platform that would probably have relevance on the other. So it gave me an advantage in growing there. But I've not played the...
Do you feel
Sorry?
Do you feel famous?
No, I mean, I feel one thing I learned recently. So something happened in the kind of that shook up the creator world just this week. And so this company Fabicon, which basically analyzes creators, helps brands decide which creators to work with. And so they have these lists. They're called rankings, and they have them in all sorts of different categories. And it's like, the top people, the top 200 in SEO, the top 200 in gardening, right? Like all these different categories. And I had been contacted by the founder of that company. He goes, by the way, because we've been interacting on LinkedIn about how many people are basically faking engagement on LinkedIn. A lot of people that are part of engagement like pods or paying for bots or buying engagement. And we all knew it was happening. Anybody who's in the kind of like audience world knew that this was happening. But there are people who are buying from them, the people who are buying into like their courses and their like, secrets of growth, like they didn't know. And so they're believing that if I just follow this person's system, I'm going to get the same results that they're getting. And that's just not the case. So Fabicon knew this, and everybody knew this in the audience growth world. And so Fabicon recently put out a new part of their scoring, which is on authenticity, and it looks at your engagement, and it looks at your content, and they basically took all of these people who are huge, kind of like huge presence, big followings, and a lot of the people that we being in the audience world knew were faking it have been basically called out on it. And it's like, yeah, like their comments, like Alex Hermosi, like from the beginning, he's gotten thousands of comments on each of his posts. Well, a lot of them are bots. Now, because you get a lot of comments, I like a lot of Alex's stuff. There's stuff of his I don't like, but I like his stuff. I think he's, brilliant. I love his podcast. I listen to it a lot. But from the beginning, he always had massive engagement. And then you look at his authenticity score and it's like, yeah, it's because he was probably using like, engagement farms in the beginning to give him a huge visibility boost. And that then helped. And now he probably gets a lot of really genuine engagement, but also still a lot of obviously gained engagement. And so for me, you asked if I feel famous. I don't feel famous. I feel proud because this list came out from Fabicon that I didn't know that I was on, and I'm #1 in Canada for branding and positioning. And like, I love branding. That's the thing I love the most, really. Like, all the buyer psychology stuff won't work for you if your foundation isn't right. Right. I've always been geeky about the foundation stuff. So being #1 and then coming out, they came out with this authenticity score and I got a 99.5 out of 100. That I'm proud of. Like, that I'm proud of because I've had a lot of opportunities to game the system and tried it for a little while. I was part of an engagements group for a little while and I just didn't feel good about it. I hired a VA to go off and interact on people's posts, which is like a way to gain visibility. I just didn't feel good about it. I was like, this isn't right. Like, if somebody takes the time to comment on my stuff, they should either get a comment back from me or nothing. Right? Because like, there's times when I'm just too
Interesting.
busy and like I'll post something and then I'm a parent and I'm like focused on family. And like by the next day, I'm like, oh, I can't even think about going through all of these responses. I'm just gonna like, just call it like nuclear for the day and not respond to any of it. But like, I'd rather do that than just pay somebody to do it all for me and have that person thinking they're actually engaging with me when they're not.
But you're not selling a system.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, with
I mean,
Unignorable, we were selling.
But you have Why We Buy, though, is a newsletter, right? And that's just that there's no charge for Why We Buy, right? I mean, right? So that's just marketing.
Yeah,
that's marketing insight. And then Unignorable, that's not a system, that's knowledge, right? That's like spending to get knowledge. That's not a system where it's like, if you pay X amount of dollars and do this, you're going to get this. Like, you're not making any of those broad claims in Unignorable. No. You're just simply sharing with people like me that if I sign up for this and I follow this, then it could happen, but it's not going to
because
happen.
At the end of the day, the hacks and the platforms all change, but the foundation of this is why buyer psychology and like branding and positioning are all my favorite things. Is like everything changes so quickly in the business world, particularly in the marketing world, but humans don't change that fast. Like, our basic psychology has been born over like 200,000 years and it doesn't change that fast. And so we all are stressed out about like AI content and this and that. And it's like, yeah, but if you just figure out how humans work, you're going to be able to create better stuff. And it doesn't matter whether, you've got these cool new tools you can use, but those tools are going to be worthless if you still don't get the people you're trying to attract and get their attention. So, we don't sell systems, but I think that for me, when I was doing Unignorable, there was this, that was successful. We ran 5 cohorts. We did over $1 million with those 5 cohorts as a very part-time thing. It was not our main business. It was a side thing. But I also felt a little bit strange. So I was like, there's other people out there in the space that have much bigger followings than we do, right? And I was like, why would somebody choose our stuff when I know the way the human brain works, and the human brain looks at like, I want to build followers. This person has 100,000. This person has 400,000. Well, that person must be 4 times as good at teaching me, right? They must have 4 times more information to be able to deliver. Their systems must work 4 times more effectively. The reality is a lot of those people were just cheating, and they weren't teaching the cheat, because the cheat was something they had to keep secret, right? So they would tell you, I'm going to reveal all these secrets, but their real secrets were not being taught.
Katelyn Bourgoin, you are, I got to tell you, you remain one of my favorite follows on social. I'm glad that I know you. I feel like I'm, behind the curtain a little bit in reading your work, but you're just a mirror. I mean, for a business owner, you're like the ultimate mirror, and I'm someone who appreciates that. And I'll read your work and I'll say to myself, like, oh, God, she's right. And it's, I need that. Like, we don't have a lot of accountability as an entrepreneur, and like, you're someone who unintentionally, I mean, I don't think it's intentional, because like you said, you're talking to yourself. I don't think you're like, Jay, here, like, you should see, but that's how it comes to me. And I've always appreciated that level of candor in my life, and I need that,
You're very
honestly,
good at this too, though, Jay. Like you're like from our first interaction there, we're part of Hampton Group together. Like that first day where we all got together, you were just immediately vulnerable. A lot of people don't have that confidence to do that. And I think that for me, vulnerability is like being able to like showing my shit. Like for me, there was this great quote I heard recently, which is like, shame exists in the shadows, right? And
Mm.
if you have something that you feel shameful about and you talk about it, suddenly it takes all the power out of it, right? So like vulnerability, like sharing, this isn't going the way I hoped it would. This is not as successful as I'd hoped, or I'm struggling with this. Like I have a post I'm going to work on to explain why I'm taking, most of the summer off because I'm burnt the F out. And like most people in my world, they create this lifestyle that they're selling. They're selling their lifestyle. They're like, look at me. I work, 10 hours a week and I'm traveling all over the world. And like, I'm a mom, but I
Right.
have all this time to work on my body because I've got these great systems. And it's like, I don't want to sell a lifestyle. I want to sell tools that can help people improve. But like, I don't want to sell the lifestyle because it creates this expectation in people that they're able to achieve that so easily. And then when they don't say Katelyn was wrong. They say, I failed. I did something wrong. And they stop trying and they don't believe in themselves anymore. And so I really don't like that. So like I'm working on this post sharing about like how I'm burned out. I've been going hard and I'm burned out. And I'm going to take a step back. And there's no shame in that.
Like, what does that look like for you? Like not posting on Twitter or LinkedIn for 3
I
months?
think what it will look like is I will probably still be posting, but in a different capacity. So like I've always had like something happening in the business where like we're launching this or this promotional thing's coming up. So I'm always kind of crafting my content with intention around, I know we're going to be promoting this. And so I want to be priming people,
Yes.
getting them ready for that. And I
I'm
don't
going to get
know.
feed pictures in this. I'm going to get feed pictures in the sand now.
Exactly, yeah. You're gonna get so I'm basically my plan for the summer is to wander and to
Fun.
figure out what I really want to do. And if it's, so I'm looking at a partnership with a friend of mine that I really appreciate. And like, we're going to explore maybe building a personal branding agency together. Cause like, I love the strategy and the messaging piece of it. She's an incredible designer. She does all my work. We're talking about exploring what that collaboration would look like. I'm going to do that publicly. We're going to have a podcast. We're going to kind of share the whole thing, but I'm not
You're
selling
incredible.
anything because I don't know if we're even going to go forward with it. Like, but I just want to, I want to be really transparent with people as we go through this and figure it out. And I'll share that. That'll be my content, but it'll be less content.
I can't wait to see the next 10 years. I know you don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years with you. I know I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years with you, but like, it would not surprise me if you're on one of those lists that I referenced earlier, which is this like the most successful women and then fill in the blanks, because you've always had that brain, you've always had that drive, and you've always had that candor to be able to share who you are at the moment. And, nothing has changed in our conversation here today. It's just been awesome getting to know you, and you're, a lot of stuff I didn't know. And where, you came from and
Well, this is a fun
growing up.
format, Jay,
And
because you know what? Most of the time when I'm invited on a
yeah,
podcast, the goal is like, what are the, sometimes we'll talk a little bit about this story, but when it's really getting into like the tips, right? It's like, give me tips. Like,
that stuff's out
this
there,
is not a
Katelyn.
format
I mean, if
that I
someone,
generally get to do.
but that's out there. I mean, someone has that. I mean, if I want to find out tips from you, I'm going to subscribe to your newsletter, which you should. I'm going to take on Ignorable, which if you have a business would be good for you. And if I want to read your posts, you post every day or almost every day, if not more, on the mediums. Like all that stuff's out there. It's just like the thing for me that's always fascinating about the entrepreneurs is like, we're not, you hear, are you born or are you made? It's like, you're not born. You're just not. Like it's, everybody I've talked to has got this like weavy, windy, crazy story that could have ended up at a 9-to-5 job or in prison or dead or something different than where they're at today, but didn't.
The only people who have the like, I didn't know what I was doing, and now like look at me, like 18 months later, I've like got making $100,000 a month, and I've got like millions of followers. Like those people are trying to sell you something. reality is that it's never a straight line for any of us. There's so many ups and downs. Every successful founder you see had failures before that and will probably have failures after. Because like when you're a founder, you're just going to build stuff. You're always going to build stuff, right? And like you're probably going to have some things that work and some things that don't. Like, and so there's never a straight line. And I like that you're pulling that you're trying to helping put the kind of timeline together so that people that are listening right now, because for me, my big thing is like, I want people that go into this with real expectations. There's this painting I saw in Miami and I think about it all the time. And it's like expectations are the blueprints of disappointment. Because if you go into something with an unrealistic expectation, not only are you going to be disappointed when the outcome doesn't happen, but you're going to think that you failed, that you did something totally wrong. And so for me, it's like about setting realistic expectations so that people show up ready to do the work. And also they don't quit when it gets hard, because it's going to get hard. Like,
yes. There hasn't been an entrepreneur I've ever known, ever, who hasn't at some point in something wanted to quit.
Quitting feels easy. It's human nature, right? Like, it's like, there's got to be something easier. We always are looking for easier. And there's so many people that are willing to sell us that they've got the thing that's going to be easy. You know, you're seeing this huge boom in the kind of like these sweaty businesses now. Those aren't fucking easy either. There's no easy business.
No.
The easy business.
No, the guy who owns the garbage trucks is emptying garbage trucks.
And he's dreaming about doing businesses like ours, right? Like, he's dreaming about, like, it would be so much better if I was like in the print business, or it'd be so much better if I was like in a media company. Like, everybody's always looking over the fence at the grass being greener. And the reality is that I think that for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's about finding your unique gift and then figuring out how to build a business around that, because that's what's going to make it easier. Like, we all have something that we're really good at. You're incredible at sales, right? So any business you do has to have you in a sales role, because like,
well, I found a transactional business. I found something where I could show up every day, have nothing, and create something in that same day, which keeps me motivated on a day-to-day basis. If I was in an enterprise sale, which I was, if and didn't have that potential to make something out of today, that becomes very taxing, and it doesn't appeal to my best skills, which is wanting to create something now. So I wake up every day with urgency because I've proven that urgency can pay off today. And it doesn't mean that I don't have a long-term vision. It's just I found something that can act in the short term to create that long term.
And like, looking at my husband, like, my husband's a great chef. My husband is an amazing manager. Like, people love to work for him. When he was running his fish and chip truck, like, it started as a fish and chip truck, became a franchise. He had chefs who had been working in like fine dining restaurants who were working in his chip truck, who felt so proud of the food that they were putting out, because he cares a lot about quality. But like, he's an amazing manager. If he does it, like, a business that doesn't include him getting to work with a team, it would be a waste of his talents. Like, he's a human engineer.
Amazing.
Like, we all have our things, right? And so that's another thing, like, maybe a good thing to leave the audience with is, like, if you're at the stage where you're trying to figure out what's next, like, focus more on kind of the life you want and your skills, and then work your way backwards. Don't get caught up by the shiny objects. Don't think, oh, I need a following, or I'm going to do a sweaty startup, or I want to, build a, online course business. Just ignore all of that. Focus on, like, well, what do I want my life to look like? What are my unique skills? A really great book everyone should read is Wanting, which is around mimetic desire, which is this idea that we don't know what to want. So we look to people and we see what they appear to want, and we decide we want that too. And oftentimes when we then achieve that, we feel hollow because it was actually never the thing we wanted. Jay, you might want to build an audience with this podcast. You might blow up and realize it's not what you actually wanted, right? So, like, I think for a lot of us, that's part of what my wandering is going to be this summer, which is really getting clear on what I want, because it's easy to look around us and see smart people that appear to be doing well and say, whatever's working for them, I want that. But when you get it, sometimes it feels pretty hollow. And
yeah, wow. Pretty awesome. Katelyn, I've enjoyed this. I've really loved our chat, and I'm glad that you agreed to come on with me. And I hope we could stay in touch through the summer. If you do end up making it down to Cape Cod, you have a place to stay. Without
first person I contact.
Without me there, and with the fam. And yeah, I mean, you're awesome. And I people can find you online. Katelyn Bourgoin, not very hard to find on X, on LinkedIn. Look at our programs. They're amazing. And yeah, I just can't thank you enough. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you,
Jay.
Thanks for listening to JaySapChats. I hope you leave a little bit better than you came. And here's wishing you a beautiful week.